everyone, my name's Alexandra and I'm a watercolor artist. With Father's Day coming up so soon, I wanted to help you guys out with a quick last-minute Father's Day card in under 10 minutes. All you'll need is some watercolor paint, paper, and brushes. We are going to do this in under 10 minutes, so no time to waste. Let's get started. For supplies today, I'm using 140 pound cold press watercolor paper. I have 2 cups of water, 1 for clean, 1 for dirty. For paintbrushes, I'm using Princeton's numbers 2 and 6. And then I have a Fineliner. You guys can use any one here, you just want to make sure that it is waterproof. And lastly, for paints, I'm using Philosophy and Co's Woodlands palette. So for our Father's Day card, we are going to be painting a sort of mountain and lake scene on our card. The painting that we're going to start with is going to be pretty loose and abstract, and then we're going to go in with our Fineliner to really add some definition. So I'm going to go into my paints and mix sort of a gray color. I want it to be really watered down. I'm using my number 6 paintbrush to start. And I'm just gonna jump straight into my card and I'm gonna paint sort of these angled lines at the top to imitate mountains. So the idea is that you're using the tip of your paintbrush and you're pulling back sort of at an angle. Everything is really loose. You don't have to be too picky about it. And even with such simple lines, you guys can see that already you can tell that this is mountains. And then once we add the pen in, you're going to be able to see this so much better. So now that we have that, we are going to go in and add some water. So I'm mixing up my blue. And the idea with this whole painting is that we are just blocking in our colors. So for my water, I'm continuing with my larger paintbrush and I'm just painting kind of in a pond lake shape. But as with my mountains, it's very loose, it's not super defined, and we're just painting across our page. Keeping everything really nice and watery. While it is wet still, I can actually go in with a bit more pigmented paint if I want and just let it bleed into what I've already painted. And if I want to, I can even add a touch of green. I'm just mixing a little bit in there just to give it a really cool, natural look to it. So now that that's done, we are going to switch to our smaller paintbrush and we're going to add some trees in. So I'm going to go into my green paint here. I'm using the deep moss from this palette and I'm making it more pigmented. And I am going to go in and sort of add trees to each side. So with the tip of my paintbrush down, I'm going to do little dots coming down, and I'm sort of working my way as if I'm imagining a triangle here, just to make it bigger as I go down. So the idea is that you're following this kind of imaginary triangle shape, and you're just doing little clusters of dots because we want it to look nice and abstract. I'm really not too picky about how it's looking. And I'm going to work my way smaller as I come in so that you can kind of really just see the lake peeking through. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So these trees specifically are very small. They're not super detailed just because we're going for a really simple card that you guys can do really quickly. But if you guys do want a more in-depth tutorial on how to paint watercolor trees, check out my pine tree tutorial and it'll give you some more insight, especially if you're turning this into a larger painting that has more detail. So I'm working my way smaller as I go in. And I'm just adding to it by painting these really, really loose lines. And you'll see even with it being super splotchy like that, it doesn't really matter. You're still getting the effect that we're going for here. So now that I've done that, I want to add some trees in behind here as well. Typically when you see trees off in the distance, they're more green than blue. So I'm mixing my paints together and I'm going to go for a little bit of a lighter color. And I am just going to paint tiny little clusters of trees down. So the idea is that you're just doing sort of a jagged edge coming up. And we're keeping it really small. And then along the lake at the bottom, I can kind of make a more defined straight line if I want. And then I'm just pulling my paintbrush up to get this really kind of toothy, jagged edge. Now I'll do the same thing over here. I can start with that line across the bottom and then mixing in some more blue instead of green. I'm gonna take my paint and I'm just gonna pull that color up. So just giving the illusion that there's a cluster of trees down there. Perfect, okay, so now that we have that, we're gonna start going in with our pen. I'm actually just gonna start with my words here, and then while everything else dries, we can jump in there. So on my card, I decided just to write Happy Father's Day, and I'm going with sort of a messy, kind of more cartoony print. Now I did go over this with pencil first. If you guys want, you're more than welcome to. It definitely helps when you're trying to make sure that you have it centered on your page. And I'm just gonna go in and erase the pencil lines. All right, so now that that's done, we can go in to our actual drawing. So going over my mountains, I'm just gonna start by following those lines that I've drawn. Now the idea is that I'm following even the shadows that I drew, and I can kind of color them in a little bit. We're just gonna scribble over them. We wanna give it kind of a really loose look, but you'll notice even with these messy lines, your drawing is just going to come together. So you'll see that I'm honestly just scribbling lines into my painting, but the lines are intentional. I'm trying to follow those shadows that I drew and follow them all the way down. So now that I've done that, I can move down to where my lake is and draw my baseline there. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna outline each tree. So the idea is that I'm sort of following where that imaginary triangle is with these really loose scribbles. So I'm getting that tree shape in with just very loose definition. So nothing has to be super specific here. This is also a really fun craft to do if you wanted with your kids, and then you can go over after and add the lines in. So now onto our lake, we're gonna add some really loose, sort of wavy curves to look like the ripples in the lake. So with this, I'm just doing kind of these S curves all throughout. Perfect. Okay, so now that that's done, we have about a minute left. The last thing that we do is go back in and add a little bit more detailing. So I want to add some more detail to my mountain, kind of in between where I drew these clusters of lines. I want to add in some darker paint and just really give it more definition. And as you do this, you'll notice that it makes those pen lines that we drew look a lot more intentional. All right, and there you guys have a Father's Day watercolor card in just under 10 minutes. Thanks for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed painting along. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and comment below what you'd like to learn next. Also, if you guys followed along and painted a card of your own, I absolutely love seeing your creations. So make sure to share them with me on Instagram at Alexandra Victoria Studio. See you next time.